appealing for some help and support for Britain's trans community who currently face genocide. And I use that word very consciously and deliberately.
Not at the gate. They're not at the gate. They're well inside.
Good evening and welcome to Mr. Matters. I hope you're all surviving out there in Clown World.
Jesus was trans.
So we find ourselves on the cusp of an historic injustice that amounts to the mass murder and extinction of one particular group. Yes, I'm talking about trans genocide. Now when you hear the word genocide, you may think of death camps, pile of bodies, the Holocaust, Rwanda, Armenia.
Yeah, this is bullshit. Okay, hold on.
I mean, you think of genocide, but what is genocide? Well, here's the dictionary definition. The deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. Now, call me a skeptic, but I seem to have missed stepping over the mass graves and missed the crowds running away from the new overlords snuffing out parts of the population. What's the word I'm looking for?
Bullshit.
So let's have a look at the claims and see if they stand up to the actual reality of what's happening in the Western world. So before I get to the videos, let's talk about the words transgenocide. And let's be crystal clear about this. They're using the word genocide to conjure up images of the Holocaust, of all the past atrocities. They know what people think when they hear the word genocide, and they're using it for their own personal gain. And it's disgusting because it's belittling the atrocities that happened in the past for some short-term personal gain, to delude other people to join the cause, to not look at the facts of what's going on, to pretend we're all Nazis and trans people are going to be exterminated. Is gross. So let's look into it. Let's look at the numbers and see if there is a trans genocide happening in the UK and around the world. So I've got an article here from Unheard called The Truth About Trans Murders. It's written by a lady called Tish Still. I believe that is a pseudonym because she has a transgender son that she wants to keep out of the public eye, assuming because she's not just towing the line and the trans activist would hound her son and herself. So the government doesn't publish data on the number of transgender people in the UK, though in 2018 it tentatively estimated that the figure stood between approximately 200,000 and 500,000. What proportion of this number must have been killed to warrant today's warnings of trans murder epidemic? 10, 100, 1,000? To find out, I analysed data collected by the trans-led organisation Transgender Europe, which has received more than $1 million from the Arcus Foundation, who is based in the US and takes a keen interest in transgender issues. Looking at Transgender Europe's list of cases, it became clear to my relief that the total murders reported for the UK since 2008 amounted to 11. This translates as a murder rate of around 0.165%. Now that is still significantly higher than the murder rate of the UK as a whole, but looking a bit closer at the list of trans murder victims and the figure of 11 becomes increasingly suspect. For instance, two of the listed victims, Vicky Thompson and Jacqueline Cowdrey, appeared to have been erroneously included. Thompson died by suicide while incarcerated in HMP Leeds, while Cowdrey's death was ultimately ruled as non-suspicious. This reduces the total to 9 unlawful deaths, all of whom were born male. By contrast, the number of homicides committed by transgender people between 2008 and 2017 was 12. For context, the number of women killed by men during the same period was 1,800. So much for alleged cis privilege. Searching for more information led me to the work of Karen Ingala Smith, who founded the Counted Dead Women Project in 2012. Ingala Smith's tireless work focuses on female victims of predominantly male violence, though she made an exception to highlight the discrepancy between the mass hysteria about transgender victims of homicide compared to the treatment of women killing as a mere background noise. There is still no equivalent to the Trans Day of Remembrance for the much greater number of women killed by male violence. Crucially, her research sheds a vital spotlight on the 9 remaining victims identified by the Trans Murder Monitoring Report. Reading it, two things become clear. The first is that it's not entirely certain certain that all the victims themselves identified with the label transgender. The second is that the motives behind these crimes are more complex and straightforward transphobia. 3 of the 9 victims were murdered by a violent punter while working as prostitutes. Another was killed by her husband, who lived off her earnings from prostitution. Another of the victims died at the hands of someone who was also trans-identifying. Another was a gay man who cross-dressed occasionally, and the motive for the murder has been ascribed to both transphobia and homophobia. 2 of the murders were linked to drug use. In other words, despite the way their deaths are often framed in the media and by activists, the large majority of these trans victims were not killed simply for being trans. Almost half appeared to be involved in prostitution, a fact that has been quietly brushed under the carpet. Nor is this willful misunderstanding confined to the UK. According to global statistics, 58% of transgender murder victims were born male and work in prostitution. Presented in this light, it seems obvious to me that we need to rethink the accepted narrative around transgender murder rates regurgitated with monotonous regularity by both politicians and the media. Pretending that there's a trans murder epidemic when incidences are isolated and largely confined to prostitution is equally unhelpful and even dangerous, not just to the people like my son, but to the women whose murders are quietly forgotten in favour of a performative headlines about an epidemic that doesn't exist. AKA, it's nonsense. So let's be clear here, there are 11 murders of transgender people in the UK. 1 of them was a suicide of a prisoner, 2 were drug related, a majority was to do with prostitution, an incredibly dangerous profession in which other people who do not identify as trans end up murdered or abused.
This is a bit of a Bob Geldof style video, really, just appealing for some help and support for Britain's trans community.
Okay, a little context here. This is India Willoughby, formerly known as Jonathan. A while back he used to present the news for ITV and Channel 5 here in the UK before becoming the standard tragic face, appearing on such life-sucking abominations as Loose Women, Big Brother and any daytime TV show that would have him. Now, he used to be far more rational about the trans topic. Here he is on Trigonometry 2018, talking about how people can't take an argument without making it personal.
I'm fine with discussing or debating actual points and having an argument, but we can still be friends at the end of it. But I think there's a tendency, not just within the trans world, but in life in general, for some people just to take it so personal. They can't differentiate between an argument or a point being made and it being a personal grudge.
Now, this seems to have gone out the window for India in 2023, as he now sees every argument against him as an attack personally or an attack on all trans people in general. Now India spends the day on Twitter, blocking anyone from replying to anything she says, insults people, insults people's appearance, insults trans people's appearance that don't agree with her, and he thinks the whole world's against him because he's trans. No one cares.
Who currently face genocide. And I use that word very consciously and deliberately. And I know there'll be people watching this video thinking, India, stop being such a drama queen.
Yeah.
Nobody's building camps. Nobody's having you lined up against a wall and shot. No, that isn't happening. But moves are afoot to legally make us not exist anymore. And under the Geneva Convention, it says that if you make an environment such that a section of society can no longer exist, that is genocide.
See, they just move the goalposts as to what genocide means to most people and what the dictionary definition of genocide is. Like I say, they use that word knowingly to conjure up images of death and destruction and mass extinction. And now they're just changing it. And to pretend that the UK is an inhospitable environment for trans people is just bollocks. UK is one of the best places on earth to be trans. Just because we don't want to sterilize children and we want to protect women doesn't mean that you can't live a normal, happy life as a trans person.
And that is undoubtedly what's happening here in the UK. So let me point out a few things to back that up. We currently have a government and, unbelievably, the official opposition saying that trans people should be banned from public areas.
No one is asking for you to be banned from public areas. You have just as much access as everyone else to public spaces. What is being asked of you is, if you are a biological man, do not go in women-only spaces, because then they are not women-only spaces. This is really not a hard concept to get, and it isn't genocide, it isn't erasure, it's just common courtesy. Women want to feel safe in their spaces, and they feel unsafe when transgender people have access to them because they are biological men which have an advantage over women. Eddie Izzard, the comedian, went into a woman's toilet and found a group of teenage girls in that toilet which were clearly taken aback from him being in there because he looks like a man. So they said something, and instead of thinking, oh, I'm making people feel uncomfortable, I shouldn't be in here, he berated the young girls. This is the level of narcissism we're dealing with. It's not about you, it's about women feeling safe. You can make them feel safe and pee in public without accessing women's toilets.
We have a government seeking to change the Equality Act so that trans people legally no longer exist. They're rendered meaningless, no protections, no recognition.
The birth certificate thing. Can you change your age? The year you were born? Can you change where you were born? I mean, this whole notion that you could just change the sex that you are seems odd to me. I know there's a lot of trans people I support that have done this. I believe Book Angel said he wouldn't have done it knowing the craziness that came down the road where biological sex was ignored. So now it just seems stupid. Like, you shouldn't be able to change your birth certificate. You should be able to be trans as an adult. I don't give a shit what you do as an adult. Fill your fucking boots. But I don't think we should be changing birth certificates. Is that eradicating trans people? No, because you can still live your life as trans. No one is telling you what to wear, what to do, apart from don't go in women's spaces. No one's saying don't live your life how you want to live it. We're just saying, this is getting a bit mental. Can we just reel it back in where kids are protected? Really not that controversial. In fact, what you're doing is extremely controversial, and I can't believe more people aren't fucking outraged.
We have teachers being told in school to grass up trans pupils to their parents, even if that might be dangerous.
Now, this subject is a totally new video. It's astounding to me how these people openly try and put a wrench between families and kids. It's just disgusting, and I'll go into that at a later date. And this video just goes on with more rants and Nazis are brought up, just nonsense. But there is no trans genocide, there is no trans mass murder. I don't care what the media tells you, what trans activists tell you, the data does not back this up. And also the UK, as well as other Western nations, aren't inhospitable to trans people. They're the best places on earth to be trans. Because you live in a free nation, you get to do what you want. Within reason, we need to protect women and kids. That's the only reason these bills are being introduced, because we're worried, because things have happened and women are pissed off, and they've got a right to be pissed off, and hopefully sanity prevails. But let's cut the shit about mass murder of trans people, because it ain't true. So that's all I've got for you today. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to never miss a new video, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay free.
Communism. Boom.